Hi, good afternoon, students. Welcome to our new Are You Ready webinar series. I guess not so new anymore. We're now in week 5, and we are focusing on the career field of entrepreneurship. The reason for this is that any career field can use these same skills that you need for entrepreneurship, creative thinking, problem solving. So all of these skills can be used in any career, not necessarily just for entrepreneurship. So we are joined today with our partners from Junior Achievement and our wonderful volunteer, Mr. Jeffrey Eakin. Jeff is now a career volunteer, but previously he devoted his career to providing businesses, nonprofits, and governments with financing for growth. This included taxable, tax-exempt bond financing, in healthcare institutions, airport, industrial development projects, and also financing packages for management buyouts of manufacturing firms. He is also the co-founder of 3 equipment financing companies with a focus on servicing the needs of medical equipment providers. Next challenge for Jeff came in higher education. He taught finance and entrepreneurship at a local liberal arts college and eventually became the school's director of the Center for Entrepreneurship. He is a former 20-year trustee of a children's rehab hospital, former independent director of a NASDAQ-listed airline industry service company, and a USCG 50-ton master, a longtime sailor, and a volunteer to our youth. So with Jeff's background in entrepreneurship and finance, this was a perfect topic for him to cover. So we are very happy to have you, Jeff. Thanks so much.
Thank you for the nice introduction, students. Good afternoon. Good to see you back. Today, we're going to continue our discussion of exploring solutions. Session 2, exploring solutions. Last week, we talked a little bit about the 5 steps for design thinking: empathetic, defining, ideating, prototyping, and testing. Last week, we talked about being empathetic, not sympathetic, but empathetic, putting ourselves in someone else's shoes. And in this case, the shoes that we're trying to fill are those of our customer. And I use that definition broadly. Who has the pain? Who is feeling the pain? And what is it? Put ourselves in their shoes, because the sad truth is, in entrepreneurship, the most important person is not the entrepreneur, it's the customer, because a great idea is only an idea is only a great idea if you can convince the customer, person who's going to be giving up something, whether that's in a business setting or in a nonprofit setting or inside an existing company, being an intrapreneur. If they're willing to accept that idea and give something up. I'm an economist by training, and so I tend to view the world as resource allocation. What is scarce, what is plentiful, and how do we trade those two to bring success? So as I said, last week we talked about empathy, putting yourself in someone's shoes. Today we're going to talk about defining the problem and ideating, coming up with solutions. So we need to get information about what the problem is, or from my standpoint, I like to think of these as opportunities from the customer's standpoint. And that takes research. So, and ultimately what we're going to come up with is a definition of the problem or opportunity going to be. What is it going to be? And then from that, how do we search for potential solutions? And I'm back over here. Finger gone. Define step of design thinking. And I want to point out that this design thinking process of empathy, define, ideate, prototype, test is but one of a whole bunch of problem solving techniques. This is the first time I've used this one. There's one that I found and you'll found works for you. You feel comfortable with it. You've tried it. It works for you. You may tweak it a little bit under your terms. But there isn't any reason why you had to follow these solutions lockstep. After completing this learning topic, you will be able to describe the defined step in the design thinking problem solving model and demonstrate how to write a short, clear problem statement that reflects the problem to be solved. So here's a little diagram. We've done the empathy. We're now in the define step. The goal of the define step is to think about the information you have collected in the empathize step. Draw a conclusion about what the actual problem is, or it's called identifying the root cause. Uh, it's like a doctor finding out what the root cause of your ailment is. He can look at the symptoms of that. That runny nose does not define the problem. Runny nose can be a lot of things. So he searches for runny nose, runny eyes, blocked ears. Oh, it's probably a sinus problem. So he's identifying the root cause and then find a short, simple way to express it. I will tell you one technique and I'll repeat it later, and that is you'll rarely have all of the information that you need. You may know what information you need and just not have it available. Don't let that stop you from defining the problem. The technique that I use is called double question marks. So when I get to a point in a problem when I say the problem for this particular company is that they're not sure how many products they should solve, but they think it is on the order of magnitude of 2,000 pieces of product. And after 2,000, I will put a double question mark. And what that is it's a reminder to me that that is a fact which I don't know, but I have to have a target. And as I explore the problem further, I will probably come to the conclusion that the 2000 question mark is either accurate or it's inaccurate. Hopefully, I'm not that far off. I would also, the reason I use double question marks is when you do spell check, when you when you've written this and you're preparing to write a business plan, it's easy for the spell check to skip over a question mark like it's a question. The double question mark, it doesn't know what to do with, so it stops the double question marks. So even if I've forgotten that it's in there and I read it and I don't see it, what this will do is remind me that there's a fact out there that I have made an assumption about that I need to confirm. So a problem statement is a short, clear description of an issue based on what, I like that term, issue, have issues, based on what you have learned about a person's needs during the empathize step. Now, this particular recommendation, I don't get too hung up on this one. Written in the first person, the voice of the person who has the problem. So it would be like I was talking to the company president and he was presenting me with the problem. I have this problem. I wouldn't get too hung up on that. I have a personal bias and it comes from the industry that I spent my career in. I was in many cases in the securities industry, investment securities. Everything in the investment securities business is written in third person. There isn't anything that's written in the first person. So I spent my life in that vein, and that my brain is wired that way. It's a bias. We all have biases. Just know what they are. So I know that that's my bias. If you feel comfortable writing in the first person, go for it. If you have trouble writing in the first person, or it presents a problem to you writing it, then write it in the third person. We're going to skip that one. So elements of a good problem segment. It's human-centered because these are generally human issues. Even if it's a technological problem, it's about humans. We are not generally solving problems that are machine to machine, although we could be. Most of the problems we're dealing with is machine to person or person to machine. It's broad enough to allow for a variety of creative solutions. Don't write the problem statement in a way that narrows what the potential solutions are. Now, it probably will to some degree, but try to avoid that because we're not looking for solutions right now. We're looking to broadly define this so that we can come up with potential solutions. But it's narrow enough so that the problem is identifiable and actually can be solved. One of the things that I've used in doing this is to use Post-it notes. I'm a big fan of Post-it notes. Or if you don't have access to Post-it notes formally, cut up paper in small pieces, because I use Post-it notes not for complete sentences, but for what I call hot words. Hot words, a word or two or three that when you see the Post-it note, you know exactly or have a pretty good idea of the message that it's trying to convey. And what I found is it is often helpful when we go to actually making statements is to rearrange those Post-it notes in order so that we can then link it together with verbs and nouns and adjectives and make complete sentences. So problem statements are written in the first person from the point of view of the person who has the problem, and each person or group has a different problem statement. So if you're in a group of 3 people or 4 people, everyone writes their own problem statement, and then you pick one to modify, or you pick all of those and you collectively start from scratch and write a single statement. If you have 10 people in your group, that's too many single statements, so divide it up into teams. Now is probably an appropriate time to also strongly suggest that one person be in charge. The person is in charge of the process, not the conclusion. They're there to keep people on track. They're there to keep track of time. Okay, I'm going to give you 3 minutes to do this. You have 2 minutes left. You have 1 minute left. Put down your pencils. They're not there to say this is the right way to do it, this is the right answer, or this is the wrong answer. We're going in the wrong direction. They're there to get you from slowly sliding off to the side and talking about the problem you had with your dog. That's not what we're trying to do. We're trying to do a problem statement here about the problem at hand. So how you do that, there has to be somebody that is in charge. And if it's not, I think somebody has to say, somebody needs to be in charge, and someone will likely say, I'll do that. They just have to remember what their role is and what their role is not. Defining the problem. So this is the activity. So what I'd like everyone to do right now is to just spend a couple of minutes and write down, if you recall what our problem was from last week, and I will try and define it the way it was, is that a regional basketball or local volleyball team has been invited to a regional competition. It requires overnight stay, meals, transportation. The team, and I'm not sure whether it's a private team or a school team, does not have the money to pay for this. And that's the problem. So you state the problem in as concise a terms as possible. I would highly recommend that you add places for facts that you think are important to the conclusion, and use my double question mark. That's what I've done on mine. I've got one written out, and I just went through it the other day and put all the double question marks in where I thought they were appropriate. But take a few minutes, write that out. The problem solving statement from the standpoint of, let's call it, something. This is a place where the team captain probably should have been and is involved in this. So write it from the team captain's standpoint. If you need facts, make them up and put a double question mark so that you know them. I'll give you a few minutes to do that. No. Okay, the other thing that I think that is important for that person who is the a moderator, we'll call him moderator, is to set a time limit. If you don't set time limits, then it can go on forever and people won't be motivated. Now, some people will show up after the 3 minutes and have nothing on their sheet. And it's also the moderator's job to deal with that. Okay, folks, what is the real problem? So let's go back to using hot words. And we'll use the hot words. Someone has to be the leader and set a time limit. The problem statement is one person's or one group's opinion. And as I said, I come from the securities industry, so I have a particular way of doing that. So defining the problem, maybe I skipped over with this one. Writing problem elements. Bear with me. Defining the problem. So I will give you so I'm just repeating myself. So if you don't have a fact, add it in, do the double question mark. Okay. Here's mine. It is not perfect. And it is also not something that I did in 3 minutes. The Naples High School, it's always good to personalize these things. Um, even if you're working on a problem is to highlight one keyword or a couple keywords that you put up and you say to yourself, is the next action that I'm about to take bringing me closer to a solution or farther away from a solution? And you can put that over your doorway or over your desk. The Naples High School volleyball team, I wasn't sure whether it was a girls' team or a boys' team. Not that it makes a difference, but you should know that. Has qualified for a 3-day question mark regional playoff event in Orlando question mark on April 15th question mark. This is obviously written before today. Question on April 15th question mark. The team needs to raise $3,000. That was just, I sort of guessed that I didn't even know how many people were on a volleyball team. I found out from Leslie last week that it's 12 to 15. 4 to a room at a budget hotel, how much it's going to cost to feed them, and how much it's going to cost to get them there and back. So if it's not $3,000, it's not two, it's more than $2,000. I would hope that it's not $5,000, but it could be. It's not $10,000. So I put a parameter on it so I have an order of magnitude for travel and lodging, with the parents committed to $1,000 question mark. That would be your first line of defense. It's the parents that pay for it. On travel teams, they pay 100% of it. But on a school team, and let's assume this is a school team, they're going to contribute something that's less than $100 on average. There are some parents who could contribute more than that. There are some parents that can't contribute anything. So pick a number. We're not that far off. Leaving the team, and the school has no money for this. The school itself, I think they probably do, but I'm assuming zero. With them $2,000 question mark short. What can the team do to raise these funds? You could add to that or not go. Although I'm not sure about that, because I tend to think of that's part of the solution. That's one of the alternatives, is you don't go. It's not what you're trying to achieve. So I'll sort of leave that open. Some people would put it in, some people would leave it out. I'm indifferent. But the reality is that is that's the possibility. If you don't raise the money, you don't go. So having done that, having taken mine, I would ask you to, if you haven't written it all down, just jot down the the things that struck you as either important or unimportant. If we were doing this in reality, I would have written that up on a grease board with in large enough letters and with enough space between the lines that we could easily wipe off certain words, insert certain words, and write interlinear between the lines. We could add something so that we're not all saying, well, what did you say? How did you define the problem? And what was the date that you said? It's much easier to deal with these things if they're in front of you and everyone is working off the same template. Um, or it could be, I know some of these programs like Google Classroom, would have the ability for me to put up um, my definition of the problem and have other people modify it as we go along. That's a little trickier because then the moderator has now lost total control of the process because everyone is changing at the same time. Much better off having one person say, okay, Kelly, what's your input? Leslie, what's your input? And go around the room and modify it. And sometimes, again, with enough space on the board, you can um, have two alternatives up at the same time. So the basic sentence is there, and then the problem is either modified in green, you write that one in green, or in red, you write that one in red, and then you decide which one of those is it. Once you've got that defined, that problem statement defined, I think it's important to put that up at the top of the page so that when and we're now going to move into the ideate state, that we're all looking at the same problem at the same time. Now, it may be that in this process, this is an iterative process. We go through it, empathize, define, ideate. It's always possible to go back and say, you know something, I think we missed something in the define statement. That's kind of a dangerous thing to do, but sometimes you have to do it. You have to go back and say, you know something, you're right. We need to change the definition because it's really misses something. And we want to make sure that the next move that we make, the next decision that we make, does it get us closer to the solution or does it take us farther away from the solution? So that's the defining a problem. Writing problem statements. Okay, now we're getting into design thinking, the ideate state. After completing this learning topic, you will be able to describe the ideate step in the design thinking problem solving model and apply ideation techniques by brainstorming ideas in a fast-paced activity. I wish they all were fast-paced. Sometimes they are, sometimes they're not. Sometimes you get stuck, but you have to keep plugging along. Again, I would strongly recommend using Post-its or small pieces of paper or a blackboard that has the ability where you have the ability to just list ideas, not randomly, but in no particular order on one side, but leave plenty of space in the other so that you can, quote, move the idea. Take an idea that's in that long list and move it to the forefront. And again, uh, putting these words in an order that eventually you can link them together with verbs and nouns and make complete sentences. So this is what we're doing. We're using the problem-solving statement or our problem statement to help us define. So you can see we've gone past empathize to define to now ideate, light bulb stage, a tribute to Benjamin Franklin. Ideate means to turning your initial creative thoughts into more concrete ideas that could potentially solve the problem you are analyzing. Ideate equals idea plus create. So you're looking at that problem statement and looking for again, what I call hot words in it and trying to decide solutions to it. And some of them are numbers and some of them are time. Ideate means quickly coming up with many different ideas that could be a solution for your problem. The focus is on quantity, not quality. Don't hold back and say, well, this is sort of a silly idea, and this doesn't solve the whole problem. It may very well sound like a silly problem and not solve the whole thing. But if you put that idea together with someone else's silly, incomplete idea, it may be the solution. So it's quantity, not quality. Again, it has to be time. You can't allow these to go on for usually a half an hour would be a really long time. You can accomplish an awful lot in 10 minutes, 15 minutes. And you also have the ability to, as you're in the middle of putting these things together, to say, I just had a brainstorm. What about this as a possible solution? You're always allowed to do that. I know I've said this before. I'll say it again. Part of the role of the moderator is to create an atmosphere where there are no laughable ideas. I mean, I'm laughing near you. I'm not laughing at you is an important distinction because some of the ideas are pretty silly and they should elicit a sense of humor, but I'm not laughing at your idea. I'm laughing with you because you're probably giggling at it also. As many as possible, no judgment, other than, wow, that's a really cool idea. It helps build up the mood. And once the initial brainstorming is complete, review your ideas and narrow down your list to the quote best ones. Part of the question is, in doing this, is a problem in and of itself, um, is what is best? What is best? Sometimes it depends on the facts that you've presented. But there ought to be some sense of what I call metrics. What are the metrics of our problem? Well, one of the metrics of our problem is the date is time. It's time in a couple of ways. It's time until the tournament. It's really not time until the tournament. It's time until you have to let the tournament know whether you're coming or not. So that's an important fact to realize because remember, they're counting on 4, 8, 16, 20, 24 teams. That's how playoffs work. And my numbers may be wrong because they could have double eliminations or single eliminations or triple eliminations, consolation round, no consolation rounds. Find out from the organizer, when is the last day I can call you and say, we're not coming. So that's your time frame, not the day of the tournament, because you cannot, I'll guarantee you, if you call up the day of the tournament and say we're not coming, well, you'll never have to worry about a travel budget again, because you will never be invited to a team event again. That's just throws the organizer into a total tailspin because now they have the wrong number of teams. So that's important. So that's one metric is time that you have until the tournament, cancellation date, time that team members have to devote to this and not to all of the other things that they have been devoting their time to for the last 12 months. Team practice, school, homework, duties at home, and just downtime. I'm sorry, we can't do this all 24/7. We need some downtime. So it's time, money. I guess I would say resources because this is not something that no matter what the solution is, no matter what it is, the team is not going to do this on their own. So the other metric is commitment of the team members' parents, The coach, that's probably it until you get into the solution. You're going to need a lot more resources, but those are probably important as you build up this thing. So once the initial brainstorming session is complete, review your ideas and narrow down your list of the best ones, having decided what metrics you are going to use for quote best. These are some brainstorming techniques. You can Google these. Crazy Eights is just 8 pieces of 8.5 by 11 with drawings which depict what the solutions might be using, I'll call it cartooning technique. You don't have to draw characters, but you do it, or you could do it by headline news. This is what the headline news. Naples High School, meaning what is the headline going to read a month from now? The headline's going to read Naples High School girls volleyball, boys volleyball, wins, places second, places third in regional tournament in Orlando. That's what I want. What do I need to do to get there? And draw it in a diagram. One of them is called mood board. I'm not exactly sure what, I've never used that one. I've used something similar to Crazy Eights or Crazy Fours. Mind mapping is a lot more time consuming and it involves getting your customer engaged in this. And I'm scratching my head literally trying to figure out who the customer is. I think it's the team, but the team is the solution. So I'm not so sure that mood board, because the mood board is going to tell you everybody wants to do this and they want to find a solution to it. So those are brainstorming. So quantity, quality. You should feel rushed in this. You should not. This is not a leisurely pace. This is a rushed pace. I got to get this done. I got to get it down. Set the time limit. Staying on the topic and not being diverted by other stories. Someone needs to keep track of this. Do not, I will say this as an absolute, do not do this without something written down, either by Post-its or by a blackboard or a whiteboard. Use something so that you can record this and don't ever get rid of stuff. Sometimes that means someone take a picture of. If I don't have enough space to do my list of all the ideas, and I want to now get to actually putting the ideas up on a board and getting rid of some of the list, take a photograph of it with your phone and say, okay, have we now addressed and either decided to include or decided to ignore all of the ideas that we've come up with? Someone has a reference point to say, well, don't forget, we also had A, B, and C, or X, Y, and Z. And oh, thank you very much. Let's see. Let's all drop all of those for now, but you still have a record of it. And refer back to the problem statement constantly. Is my solution getting me closer to a solution or farther away from the solution? Start with the problem statement, set a time limit, no judging, laughing, I'm laughing near you. Anything goes, no idea is too off the wall. I've never figured out what off the wall actually means, where it came from. Am I stuck on this? It looks like I'm stuck on this. So I'm going to keep going. Make sure the problem statement is posted above. And now what I'd like you to do is spend a couple of minutes, if you haven't already, spend 3 minutes jotting down in no more than 1 or 2 words possible money raising um, events or processes or alternatives or suggestions or solutions. We'll use whatever words you want. Take 3 minutes and jot those down and do not impose limits on your solution, because it may very well be that the solution that you come up with would take more time than otherwise allowed. but it may trigger a different idea in someone else. So don't be dismissive. Let the process evolve and let the group dismiss ideas. I'll give you 3 minutes. What should I do here, Kelly, about my stalled out? Should
So
I
the
go back?
last time that happened to me, I just logged out and logged back in, and it let me back in. Like if you close that, yeah. There you go.
There we go. Okay, so I'll just go back through it. Oh, resume. I can resume here. Okay, good. Okay, thank you. That got me
Yeah.
back. So jot down those ideas, quick statements, whatever comes to mind, something you've used in the past, been involved in the past. No rules are off limits. No ideas are off limits. And then I'll go through my list. I think I've already mentioned that I have some reservations about t-shirts. But this is what would come out. Um, this is what would come out in the when everyone's written theirs down and then you bring them back together, is that someone will say, as I had the experience a year ago with an event where time was not really an issue, but the subject of t-shirts took an inordinate, out of proportion amount of time for do we include sponsors? Do we not include sponsors? What's the design? Front or back sleeves? How many sizes do we get? Who gets them? Who gets them for free for being a sponsor? Who gets them for putting down $25? Actually, I think they were $35 for being just a donor. Oh, no, excuse me. It was $50 for being a donor. It's $50 for being a donor. So put your pencils down. Let me tell you what mine were. So I'll start with t-shirts. That is a possibility. T-shirts with sponsors. And by sponsors, I mean going to Wynn's or to whatever the local sporting goods store is and say, this is what we're trying to do. Would you be a sponsor? And the sponsor is not just buying a t-shirt. Sponsor, you really want to get, yeah, you really want to get $100 out of a sponsor for putting their name on the back of the t-shirt or on the sleeve of the t-shirt. Um, if they want to be a title sponsor and get it in big bold letters on the front and the back, bigger letters than anyone, maybe you can get $250 out of them. The only way you know that is if you ask, and that's the only way you know. I don't know how successful that is in terms of the local economy. But my point is that rather than selling that shirt for $35, you've now gotten $250 from Ace Hardware, and you've gotten $100 from 5 other people. You're now $750 towards your goal, so you can raise a lot more money, sponsors. And remember, all of these people that you're going to go to are people who do a lot of business with the public. They do a lot of business with the public, and they want the public to know that they support local good causes. That's why they are doing this. Their choice is to advertise in the Naples Daily News or to get it on the back of a t-shirt. So t-shirts was on. The downside to that is the time that it takes for someone to go to all of those people, get them to say yes, get the artwork from them. You're not going to create the artwork. Ace Hardware has its own artwork and its own colors. They're called, there's a name for it. Each color has a code to it. So they don't want red. They want a very specific red for the Ace Hardware part of it. It's all of that time. And then how do you arrange that? All of that has to happen before you give the order to the t-shirt manufacturer for them to print them, get them back, and for you to be able to sell those. Again, there's a time factor in there. A raffle. There's a whole bunch of issues with raffles. Permitting is probably one of them. By raffle, I mean you take something that's worth, and here's this case, you're trying to raise $2,000. There's something that's worth $1,000. I noticed in front of Ace right now, they're raffling a golf cart. It's a $4,000 golf cart. They're probably selling $8,000 worth of tickets so that they can pay for the golf cart and end up with $4,000. So you've got to raise twice as much money in ticket sales as you do. Ticket sales take time. So whatever, but a raffle is and maybe it isn't for the whole thing. Maybe the solution here is a number of these things going on. Back to resources, time and energy, and the time to the event. That also raises another possibility that again, this is a wacky idea, but don't overlook it. As much as don't go is a possibility. Is there a parent or parents who will foot the bill before the tournament to be refunded, repaid after the tournament is over? That's a risk, because if there are 24 teams in this tournament and the team finishes 23rd, that's going to be a tough sell. And it puts some parents at risk that they foot the bill and that they never get all their money back. Coming back from a tournament with 24 and finishing first, second, third, man, you got a pretty darn good chance of raising all this money because you've got a good story to sell. You've got a good story to sell to the Naples Daily News and get photographs in, but finishing 23rd, that's likely not going to happen. But it's a possibility. It's worth asking. Or there may be one parent in there that says, I'll do it. I'll take care of the whole thing. I just don't want anybody to know my name. I'm not going to become everyone's go-to person for fundraising, but I'll do it if that's what the situation is. That also raises a question about keeping people informed and who your customer is. I think your customer is the team. I think the customer is the parents who want to go, who really do want to drive up to Orlando for a couple of days or even every day to watch this happen. Keep them informed of what the situation is, because you don't know. I always like to say, don't make up your customer's mind for them. Oh, my customer will never buy that. They won't like this color. Don't make up their mind for them. Ask them, are there any parents out there who would be willing to fund this, all or in large part, to change the dynamics of this problem? Ask the question. A GoFundMe account, a GoFundMe, as I recall, they are either free or they are relatively low cost. I don't know the rules on GoFundMes. I know some of them can be incredibly successful if you get the word out. But trying to do a GoFundMe account with the parents and the parents, grandparents, and aunts and uncles and everything else, you don't have to do a GoFundMe. All you do is call them up on the phone and say, Grandma, Grandpa, I really need the money to go to this tournament. How could you help me out with $50? A GoFundMe account with recognized sponsors where you go to some people. In GoFundMe, you really don't want to start GoFundMe at a zero balance. You want to say, I'm trying to get to $2,000. I'm already at 500. So or maybe you're better off saying, I'm trying to get to 3,000 and I'm already at 1,000 by using the parents' money. The parents have committed. It shows progress. Everybody wants to fund a program, a GoFundMe account that's going to be successful. So help them along that. A car wash has its own issues. A 5K walk with sponsors. Again, it's a time issue. It's a regulatory issue because wherever you do the 5K, even if you do it at the high school track, has to be approved. It takes time to get those approvals. A TV plea, by a TV plea, I mean going to Wink News or whoever the big one is in Naples and saying, this is what we're trying to do. This is our problem statement. Would you cover us on TV? And it becomes either a promo for a GoFundMe account, or it allows you to say, please send your money. It just occurred to me. One of the issues that you have to contend with is, what do you do with the money? What do you do with the money? Whether it's cash or credit cards. Remember, I would guess today, I don't know what the number is. I'll bet it's more north of 30% of retail transactions, 50%, excuse me. 50% of or more of retail transactions are done with a credit debit card. So in all of this thinking, remember, you're going to have access to whatever that system is called, where you put the device on the end of your phone and you zip a card across it. Maybe somebody has it in their business, or it's an expense that you're going to have to endure to get this done. And then benefactors in town. If the volleyball team has been reasonably successful or reasonably long-lived, or reasonably long-lived, who was on last year's team? Will they support you? You were not going to know who was on the team 3 years ago because you weren't on the team. But if you can remember last year's team and ask them to remember the team before that, and ask them to remember the team before that, you can reach far back into history and use social media to get to those people to say, if it was you, if you had had the opportunity to go to Orlando for this tournament, a highly recognized and sought after tournament, you would have been in the same situation, or maybe you were. Maybe you find out that this is exactly what did they do? Hadn't even thought about that as a solution. What have teams in the past done? The coach would know, or the coach at the time would know what they had done. So there may be civic organizations, a boosters club, what's Naples High School called, the Golden Eagles, the Golden Eagles Parents Athletic Association. Try them, alumni associations, or there may be a big volleyball alum in your midst, someone who went from high school to college to the Olympics to national stage, that's actually in your community and you don't know about them. That's some of the searching that you can use. Again, the time till the tournament, time to devote, dollars needed, and other resources in the community. The metrics we talked about, I can't show this on TV, but if you can imagine a quadrant of 4 blocks, I can't do it backwards. And across the top is money, from left-hand side, little money raised, to the right-hand side, more money raised, and time on the vertical axis is time, least amount of time at the top, most amount of time. So that what you end up with is what raises the most money in the least amount of time. That would be in the upper right-hand corner, to the worst situation, which would be the least amount of money in the most amount of time. You want to gravitate toward ideas that are in the upper right-hand corner. Excuse me, I gotta close the door for the dog. There we go. You want to be in those quadrants because that's where your resources are going to be best used. So with that, I'm about done. I do want to go over a couple of real life examples of how companies came across problems in their lifetime. This is a problem that the team is having in the short term, but have dealt with problems over in the longer term. And so the one that I'm going to first use is Netflix. So there was a time, this is going to be hard for you to imagine, where if you wanted to watch a full-length feature film, you either went to a movie theater or you watched on Sunday night on one of the three networks. There were three, 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 three places you could watch TV. Eventually, PBS came on and it was four. That was your choice. And there was a technological shift that allowed video recorders, digital recorders, to take film and to actually replay it. And when that came through for the consumer market, the film industry, who had invested tremendous amounts of money in film, some of which, few of which, actually made any money, were sitting on their shelves with no place to go. And they realized that with this device called a tape player, they could put full-length feature films on tape and consumers could watch them in their homes whenever they wanted. It created the on-demand business. And for them, the cost of doing these versus actually creating the tape, the VHS tape, and actually putting the content on it was minimal compared to what they could rent them for. And so it was what's called in the industry found money. They didn't have to do an awful lot, and it wasn't their doing. It was a technological shift outside their control. Somebody else did it. And so what they did was they started renting these. And initially, these were mom and pop stores that you would leave your house, drive over, look at the mom and pop store. They had a limited inventory. Maybe they had four or 500 titles. And because it was mom and pop, it was open from probably noon until maybe, if you were lucky, 8 o'clock at night, because it was mom and dad and maybe their kids who were running the store. Netflix saw that and said, the pain here is not the content of the movies. The pain here is the number of movies that you can get and the fact that you have to drive to get them and return them. And the original models were that you could rent a movie for 3 days, let's say, and it was $5. But if you were late, it was another $5. So it was painful. So Netflix started renting movies. It was also the technological shift of the internet. There was a time, folks, that yes, there was no internet. There was no way to search for movies. So Netflix took advantage of these two things, put them together, and came up with this business model that allowed you to order movies online and have them mailed to you. It wasn't particularly profitable business because the VHS tape was about the size of a box of macaroni and cheese, Kraft macaroni and cheese. So it was not cheap to mail. Then came along discs, DVD discs, and it changed Netflix model dramatically. So in probably the middle 80s, they started mailing the disc to people. And interestingly enough, that was 1980, let's call it 1985. On September 29th of this year, Netflix will stop mailing DVD discs to the millions of people who still get their movies that way. So they move along, and there was a consolidation in the business called Blockbuster. Blockbuster went in and said, no, we're not going to have hours from noon until 8 o'clock, and we're not going to have 500 titles. We're going to have 5,000 titles. The stores are going to be open at 8 o'clock in the morning, and they're going to close at midnight. They're also going to sell popcorn and soda. And that was a phenomenally successful business. At one point, Blockbuster had 9,000 stores in the United States. It was mailable. So Netflix, now the big competition is, do you drive to the store and pick it up at Blockbuster, or do you go to Netflix? So now Blockbuster is down to, I believe it is one, count it, one store is left from 9,000 to one. Neither one of these companies created the shifts. Neither one of them did. What they did was they looked at the world, they looked at the facts in front of them, saw an opportunity, saw where the pain was. The pain was not, could I get content or not? The pain was, how do I get to the customer quickly? And Blockbuster originally thought, well, I'll have all these stores and they'll have all these titles, and that's the solution to the problem. And it was for a period of time. And then Netflix came along and said, no, the real pain is not content. It's that you have to get into your car and drive there and pick it up. And what if it's raining? And what if you don't feel like it? Then you don't rent it. We'll solve that problem. We'll just mail it to people. Everybody goes to their mailbox every single day that a mail is delivered. They don't go on Sunday, but they go every other day, and we'll be reliable, and it is predictable. And they would sort of a precursor to this whole idea of getting stuff when you want it. I would guess initially the Postal Service didn't know what to do with Netflix and their DVD discs, but they got used to it, and they probably went to regional. Remember we talked about FedEx and how they brought everything to one location, and eventually they spread that out, and they probably had a distribution center in Denver. Netflix probably started with one single source of all these DVDs, and eventually they realized, no, we can have one in the New York metropolitan area, cover New York, New Jersey, could conceivably even cover New England in one day. Put it in the mail, get it in the mail by 10 o'clock in the morning. You'll have it the next day. If you're after 10 o'clock, you'll have it in 2 days. That's plenty of time. Have regional centers around the country. But now they took advantage of what someone else was creating, either technologically or from the Postal Service, the ability to handle these. So that's what I've got for today for the brainstorming. So next week we'll talk about what we came up with solutions. I'm gonna go through here. No, I'm stuck again. I'll just look up my notes and make sure that I have covered everything. Crazy eights, crazy fours. We're gonna skip that anyway. So we've defined the problem in our problem statement, and we've now generated a whole bunch of possible solutions. We've narrowed those down so that next time we will be actually making that transition from the single solution that we have come up with, whether it's t-shirts, a raffle, and we have from that definition of our solution created the challenge list, the to-do, I'll call it a to-do list. What do we have to do to actually make this a prototype? Prototype is a model of what you're doing. In this case, our model is probably descriptive. Here's how we're going to do t-shirts. It's not so much about the t-shirt as it is what's going to be on it, what are the time frames to get content on it, our sponsors, what the event is, how are we going to sell these, who's going to sell them, what do we do with the money? We don't want to be casual about that. I'm not suggesting anyone's going to do anything untoward, illegal about the money, but gee, I thought I had $20 to $25 or $35 in my pocket. Now I can't find it. Whose problem is that? So anyway, enjoyed talking with you today about brainstorming solutions. I really get worked up about this part of the phrase because I think it's or phase of the process because I think it's an awful lot of fun, and it should be a lot of fun. It's rushed. It's a little crazy at times, and it's time limited, but it's a lot of fun. So thank you very much. Look forward to seeing you next Tuesday.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Thank you to all of our students and teachers and parents that are going along with us. This was session 5. Next week, we will be on session 6. That's going to be more of the prototyping. And then we will wrap that up the following week with session 7, and that is our panel discussion. So we only have 2 more weeks left, students. I hope to see everybody next week, same time, same place, every Tuesday from 4 to 5 at the same Zoom link that we've used every week. So we hope to see you then, and have a great week. We'll talk to you then.
Bring your popcorn.